Welcome to the show, everyone. I am so excited about networking with everybody out there. We're live on Facebook, so hi to everybody out there. Right now I have two of some of my favorite peoples that I have that come on the show. I have with me Tiffany Phelan. She's the owner of Senior Helpers. I also have with me Scott Fischer, and he's the owner of Options for Senior Living. Now, you're going to think, Carol, you had two people on that do similar things on one day. I would never do that. But here's the thing. They meld together. This is what's really cool. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited about doing this hour with you today. I want you kind of to talk a little bit about yourselves. I know you have some statistics, Scott, so I want to start with that. And listen up, everyone, because first of all, if you're a baby boomer, okay, on up, you need to listen. Anybody, if you've got parents that are aging, you got to listen up. Go ahead.
Well, Carol, it's great to be back. Tiffany, good to see you. We've known each other for years. Options for Senior Living, I opened in 2003. I left my healthcare career. I was in healthcare career. I was a nurse. Graduated from Arizona State University, and for years took care of folks that were suffering with some sort of mental health, mental illness kinds of things. That shifted into caring for people with challenges with their dementia. Really was the psychiatric symptoms that came along with that, and that was my clinical work. It led me to meet and walk into assisted living and senior living communities for the first time, because that's where some of my patients were. There was a huge need to offer families guidance and professional insight to help them with that journey, and since 2003, that's what we do. It's been a wild ride for 22 plus years. And the business that I was in is very different than the business I'm in now after all this time. As I was coming in, I was thinking, and I was sharing with you before we went on the air about the statistics, that I'm just floored by what's going on in the city we live in. And so here's a couple of things. These are numbers from the census and numbers that I got. I can't say they're official numbers, but I'll say I have numbers from a great source. Mm-hmm. In Maricopa County today, there's 160,000 80-year-olds. 80-year-olds. In Maricopa County now, there are 1,000,000 65-year-olds. 1 million already that are there. So for those of us that don't want to talk about aging and feel uncomfortable, we put our heads in the sand, I think we're going to talk about how do we have to advance the conversation, right? From a source that I'll say is on a great source of information for me, gave me the idea or shared with me that there was 25,000, the fire department was deployed 25,000 times in Phoenix last year to help people get up off the ground. In the Sun Cities.
In their homes.
In their homes or in their senior living community.
Even in the senior community.
25,000 times. 16,000 in the Sun Cities. There's the Sun Cities out in the far West Valley. Mesa, like 8,000, Scottsdale, 6,000. We're deploying the fire department. So when we're talking about tens and tens of thousands of people right now that are at least falling and struggling at home, these are the people we want to talk. There may not be a crisis. They don't have to move into senior living yet. But these are the people Tiffany and I are trying to reach to educate them on the access to resources and get connected to help now.
These are the people that are calling. That needed help that are calling. How about there's people that get themselves up eventually,
yep,
right? And they pull themselves up and they don't call or tell anyone, so we don't even know about those people. You said something, cracking the ice on a hard conversation. And Tiffany, we have talked about this many times before, and listen, it takes about 7 times for somebody to hear something once, so it's good to repeat these things. The conversations that you help with people when you come in and sit down, because probably one of the hardest things I think it is to speak to your parents about not being able to either use your car anymore, right? Or to be able to be living in your home anymore. Tiffany, let's talk a little bit.
Yeah, so for the better part of, well, actually over 2 decades, I have worked with folks who want to be able to live at home. Mm-hmm. So that's seniors and their family members, and they're kind of in this joint agreement that they want to spend as long at home before they move into an assisted living or other type of congregate care situation. They want to be at home for as long as possible. So the question becomes, how do you make that happen? And one of the challenges that I've seen over 20 years is waiting way too long to have that conversation. And Carol, you and I have talked about this before, and you even had some personal experience with this, where the longer we wait, the fewer choices we have.
Yep.
Right? And so if something catastrophic happens at home because we haven't provided enough support for the person living there, then all of a sudden a broken hip, that could be life-changing. Now you can't live alone in your home at all, whereas if you had had somebody trying to climb the ladder to get the serving bowl out of the cupboard, right, and that incident never happened, then they could continue living home. Not that I've seen that happen before. So I think the real first question is, how do you have that conversation? And the way I look at it is, most of your listeners probably hear this and they think, yeah, that sounds like my parents. Oh, I think that's coming pretty soon. But then they freeze and they say, I don't know what to say or what to do. And so how do you usher in that conversation? And what I've been coaching families on for my entire duration of time I've been doing this is, what we're there to do, if we think about it like this, we're there to honor our parents' wishes. But how do we honor things we don't know? So if we've never talked about it, maybe the first thing that we need to do is, and I'm saying way before the time that they need help, the first thing that you might want to say to them is, hey, I want to have this conversation with you. Maybe it'll unfold over the next few days or weeks or months, but I really want to hear from you what it is that you want. As you start to need more help, as some things become more difficult, as they do for all of us, we can't get out of that part of aging. What can I do for you? What's your ideal situation?
I love what you said. What can I do for you? Because when you start saying things like, you're not going to be able to live at home anymore, Mom, soon, or what have you. Now you start, the hair on the back of their neck starts, to kind of raise. And the reason why is because, of course, they want to stay in their home as much as they can, understandably. But, like we've seen them, by wanting that, sometimes you really can't, and it gets to be I don't want to say the word, but a cluster, because honestly, it becomes crazy, and that's where you come in. You could start off with somebody who does an assessment. I think having an assessment done, seeing what's going on, having another person there too, an outside person, also is kind of good, because when you're the son or daughter, the parent, I don't know, they just don't want to listen. They don't like to hear that.
Well, as an example, my own parents, like I said, I've done this for over 2 decades, and my mother would not, she's since passed, but she would not listen to me. I had to send my care manager in to have all the conversations with her because I know nothing.
Myself.
You must, you
I
have
hired
to.
one myself.
I can say things to other people's parents that I can't say to my own parents, and they can't say to their own
parents. And we all know that. We know that even with our own children, we do the same thing anytime, when we need to go talk to them, they're not going to listen to us, so we always bring in an expert, right? Well, you should.
Mm-hmm. You hope.
Absolutely. The idea that we're here to sell anybody on anything is so far from the reality of how we operate.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to give you guidance. We're here to get you connected. We're here to help you in this journey. So when we walk into a family's house, it's routine for us to say, I never want to do anything to you. It's always with and for you, right? The caveat for my mom was, until you start making bad decisions, it's also if the fire department has been there. It could have just been once or twice, but that's a trigger.
To me, once is enough.
Right, it's a trigger. These things are starting to float around in people's atmospheres that we go, hey, that could be problematic. You missed an appointment, Mom, or you had the fire department out. It's not a huge deal. We're not changing your world, but it's time for that conversation to initiate.
We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk further. I want to give out their information. First of all, Tiffany's number with Senior Helpers is 480-360-4141. Options for Senior Living is 602-845-1320. Hang tight. We're going to be back in just a minute, and I'm going to give out the information again.
Awesome.
We're going to keep on going in here because we're live on Facebook, okay?
Yeah, and I think, one of the really great things about what Scott's company does, and this is how we kind of started working together, is they're really the initiators of a lot of conversation. So I'll initiate if folks call us first, but oftentimes they're calling because they don't know what their options are.
Right.
I love the name,
Right.
by the way.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, me too.
It's just, what are our options?
Right.
And one of the things that Scott's company will do that I think is really important that we cannot do is discuss budget. So they can tell, for us, they can say, we can spend this much, right? But you guys can get into a lot more detailed conversation. Where are those funds coming from? And when those are spent down, then what do you do? And kind of going through the entire big financial picture, and how long does this diagnosis usually, how long could you live with this diagnosis?
Yeah.
So the question is it better for me to say to them, calls, options for senior living, you do an assessment, you say, you know what, you're still okay maybe here a little bit longer, let's get you in with seniors helpers, right? They'll come in and help. Is that sort of how
That
it
happens
works?
all the time, and for our senior resource connectors business, which we're not talking about, that happens weekly. That we triage home care stuff out regularly, because people are not ready for the big kahuna yet. They're not.
Right,
They
right.
want to find out, how do we put this off? How do we
That's
cover
a
this?
whole conversation too in itself, because they think they're ready. They think they are and they're not, and that's why they're scared to not say anything. And maybe going in there and doing that assessment and saying to them, it may look like you're ready, but you're really not. Like sometimes people think they're having a heart attack and they're really not. They're having something else, right? I mean, it's the same kind of thing, and they think the worst. They do the Jack story in their mind.
Yeah, and as I said before we got started, I want to know where people are at in their head about what paradigm they're seeing senior living through. If they're still thinking it's nursing home, everybody's got their shawl on their knees and they're all got their head down waiting for the dining room.
Right.
It ain't that way. You walk in, a lot of people are living there. They're having a good time. And they are. It's not doom and gloom as if what they thought it was.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, it all depends. Everybody has a different story, right? I mean, I think that's important for people to understand too, that some people really want to go down with that ship, right? I mean, we know that,
sure.
we've seen that many
So
times.
someone related to you feel that way.
Exactly. My dad did, I mean, and I don't think it was expected that it did go down with the ship, but sometimes.
I think really good home care operators, really good placement folks, or teams that work together, like the customization, or the really individualize and customize. I think those companies that do that and don't shove everything one way makes a huge difference.
So welcome back, everyone. Important for you to write these numbers down, okay? And we were talking at the break, and we were saying that, a lot of times a lot of people do call options for senior living only because they don't know their options, so they call an option. What are our options? You said that at the break. And it might be a good idea to have it. It is a free service to the families out there, so to start off with that, we were mentioning how sometimes a lot of people think that you're ready for the big kahuna, which you said, but sometimes you're really not ready, and then you can stay in your home longer, but you need a little assistance, and maybe that's when you can call senior, helpers, and they can come in and get you on your way, taking those steps to maybe that's where it's gonna be. Everybody's got a different story. Senior helpers, it's 480-360-4141. Seniorhelpers.com is the website. And then options for senior living is 602-845-1320. It's optionsforseniorliving.com. I'm gonna let you take the floor.
Okay, so I think one of the things we just started touching on is, what's the process? So first, we really want to start that conversation with the senior themselves and find out what's important to them. I think the next part, and what I love about options for senior living, is then they talk about the budget. And so we all have our Rolls Royce of what we're hoping for, and sometimes we can afford it, and sometimes we need to peel it back a little bit. And so that's the question. If you can have that conversation early, then you can say, okay, if you really want to stay home as long as possible, and then maybe there's a certain facility, like in your case, Carol, with your mother-in-law, there was a certain facility she specifically wanted to be, certain assisted living. And so then you can look at the budget and say, okay, this is what you have coming in, this is what you have in the bank, this is how long all of that together will last you, and start to look at, maybe that's possible. If not, do you want to maybe not stay in your home for as long, or do you want to select a facility that better fits the budget? But if you can decide that long time before it's needed, it's a lot different than winding up in the hospital and having some discharge planner say, oh, can't live home alone anymore, now you got to decide.
Amen to that. And in that process, as we're looking at their resources and how sustainable everything is, If you take into account a diagnosis like Alzheimer's disease, statistically speaking, people have a 7 to 10 year window of that disease. That doesn't mean people don't live 15 years, or it doesn't take them, take their life within 3 years, but 7 to 10 years. So when someone's trying to plan 10 or 15 years down the road, and we're 7 years into this process, I have to gently remind them that mom, dad has a fatal illness. Statistically, we should probably be zeroing in about 36 months to make this. So we can afford this, maybe the best option, when we don't have to settle for maybe a plan B, right? If you want that Cadillac memory care or whatever. So it takes some finesse and it takes some understanding. We have to understand the landscape of what senior living is offering, where their price points are at, what kind of resources they offer. Some of the memory care, the Cadillac memory cares offer 24-hour nursing, 7 days a week. Some don't. So depending on what they can afford, of course, what they need, where they want it to be, we customize all that. And when they really peel it back and they go, oh, mom really hates the idea of leaving home, I'm like, well, you've just described a pretty robust budget for me. Maybe we get help from Tiffany's team, get over here and let's customize maybe what a stay-at-home plan might be with care and maybe some technology or whatever to put a package together if that's really ultimately what mom wants.
I would like Tiffany to explain that, because you do as little as and then as much as. Can you do
so
that?
one of the really neat things about home care is the flexibility, because this is one-on-one care with one caregiver for each client. We really do try to make our matches based on what we think personality will work. We want to make those long-term matches, and we want to make them more meaningful, right, than just coming in and accomplishing tasks. And since we're doing that, we have a huge amount of flexibility. I've got folks using us 4 hours once a week. And we go grocery shopping and run a couple of errands, maybe pick up medication, things like that. I've got somebody who's been with me. We are there for her. We were there for her husband before. They've been with us for almost 13 years, 24/7. So, and every imaginable schedule, just at night, just during the days, just in the mornings, some days a week, all days a week. Anything really is possible. It's all, as long as it's non-medical, and we can assist with that. So I think just the variety makes it a really good lead-in before you need that placement setting or around-the-clock care. It's a really flexible program, and we can fit right in with other family members.
I have to ask this. Obviously, if you know that your parents are definitely ready and they need, you have options for senior living, but don't do it on your own though. I have to mention this because having someone, like Scott, who knows the landscape, all of them, a lot of them, right?
Oh, please don't
do it on your own, because that's too hard to, number one, and number two, it just makes sense, obviously, to make that phone call. I wanna also talk about this, Tiffany, to you, because some people, like, I know somebody I wanna give you so badly, but she just doesn't want somebody in her home, okay? How do you get by that? I mean, because it's like, to me, I think what it is they don't know if they're gonna like the person. Maybe you're gonna have an interview, there's gonna be, maybe you have 2 or 3 that come in that you kinda, explain a little bit like that.
Sure. So I think part of what makes this really special is that everybody who has worked for me in my administrative side of this business has at one point in time or another been a caregiver, either professionally or personally. And so they really understand from the insider's point of view how hard it is to let somebody into their home, right? And so I think that's where we start, is the people really having empathy for how difficult that is and how important it is that we like the people that come into our home. And so the time that we spend in our assessment, getting to know folks, getting to know their families, and what really are the goals for everybody, and how do we take the kids' goals and the seniors' goals and put those together and make one care plan that works for everybody. But really, what I say is the alternative is so awful, right? The alternative of not having your needs met, of having a senior being forced to meet their needs on their own and having some kind of medical emergency because of it. It's worth it to try. And one of the things we always share with people is when you sign up with us, there's no ongoing commitment. Honestly, same with an assisted living facility. Month to month on assisted living facility, ours is 2 weeks. So basically, you're signing up for the first 2 weeks to get to know your person. If we need to switch them out or around, that's happened before, we'll do that. But at the end of 2 weeks, we're gonna talk about whether this is good ongoing. So we're not making life-changing decisions in the moment. We're just trying some stuff out.
I love that you were able to get that out, you know, because I don't even know if we've ever really talked about that before. And it's important to know that it's not a lifetime commitment.
Right.
We don't know yet what that's gonna be, and it probably is gonna change as you go along with this whole thing. From day one to going forward, even to the last.
I think that's one of the things Scott could probably talk about too, is one of the more challenging times when I've seen people choose placement, right, in a facility. It's really for the well spouse, especially when the spouse who's affected has some kind of dementia or something like that.
Mhm.
But really, it's the well spouse because as spouses, we feel duty bound to provide care to the person that we made an oath, a vow to care for.
Right.
And so it becomes really difficult for the well spouse to make that decision. And maybe you can talk a little bit about, like, how do you know it's the right time?
Oh, I answer that question all week long. There's objective things that I see regularly that thresholds are hit for qualifying for assisted living. I'm managing your meds, I'm preparing your meals, I'm doing your shopping, the fire department's been here twice this month. You know, there's markers, right? So I'll say to the family, well, Dad's already in assisted living, are you exhausted from providing it? Because it's really the family providing assisted living at that point.
Mhm.
So we've crossed that threshold, you know, very objectively. The whole idea that fear of the unknown prevents people from moving forward. They've already drawn conclusions that I'm not going to go to one of them places, or the lady down the street, her kids put her in somewhere, put her somewhere against her will. So you've got to untangle that initial,
Fear.
web of fear and thickened brush that's in the way sometimes, to clear that out and get the family to talk, and or get the senior, him or herself, to talk. That's where we can start to make some headway when we go in and see people face to face.
And I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's really the grief speaking right there, right?
Exactly.
That's what that is.
It's grief, it's fear. I think everything is
Yep.
fear-based,
Yep.
number one. When you don't know what you don't know, and we're gonna come back and kind of talk about that, because you mentioned it
Yep.
before, a lot of people they think that when they put them in this home and it was just terrible and this and that, a lot of them aren't anymore, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that too when we get back, because assisted living, aging is not the same as it was for like my grandma.
Right.
You know, it's just not the same. Believe me, folks. And here's people that really know, and they're here to help you. They're reaching out. They want to, number one, educate you, but they want you to have their number for you to call and talk to them and take it from there. Senior Helper is 480-360-4141, and Options for Living is 602-845-1320. Hang tight. We'll be back in just a minute. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
We're still live in here.
So I was doing a really interesting training, actually. It'll be something Scott may want to get in on too, but over at Scottsdale Bible Church, they have a wonderful support group for dementia caregivers. And I did a 3-part series doing my dementia training that I always do. And that's just watching folks go through that process of the grief, of deciding when's it the right time, how can I do this? And thinking back, and I think this is the tough thing, especially because these are mostly spouses, they remember 30 plus years ago when they put their own parents in an assisted living and what it was like. And that is not it, right? That is not it at all,
No.
but that is in everyone's top of mind of that age group, say around 80 years old, what it was like when they were 50 and their parents were 80, and yep.
My mom had to go to a nursing home. Like, that ain't what we're talking about anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is to keep them out of a nursing home,
Yeah.
And that's, I
actually.
think, why they don't call them nursing homes anymore.
Well, there are
There's
still
this-
nursing homes, but this
I'm
is
sure
something
there
that
are.
didn't exist at that time, right? This is
Right.
this is an entirely new
I looked
category.
at a long-term care policy a couple weeks ago. It was written in 1989. There's no mention of assisted living in it.
Yeah, there's no mention.
It's
That's
only
all of the
mentions
ones.
nursing home and in-home care.
Hmm.
And it really calls it home health. It really doesn't even reference
Right.
it as home care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
puts us all in the same
In the
kind
same
of
category,
basket,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, that's the oldest policy I've seen in a long time. This has got 90
We've done a
something.
lot of 1980s policies and a lot of early 1990s
90s.
policies, yeah.
Yeah.
The really good ones too, because they don't have daily maximums and stuff.
There
like
was
that.
some pretty robust policies.
There's some
Those
pretty
companies
amazing
aren't
policies.
in business anymore, they're just
Because they wrote too robust of
Yeah, they're
policies.
just servicing what they've got, but they're not ready.
Well, when you think about it, it's a very difficult death, having to lose your car, your keys,
Yeah.
Mhm.
having
Yeah.
to move out of your
Yeah.
home, having to somebody to come in to take care of you. It's like, oh, I don't need somebody to take care of me, I'm fine, right?
They're all fine. Every single person I've ever helped is fine. They're all fine.
They're all fine until, you know,
I
it
think-
seems to me it's a wonderful thing that you do offer the 2 weeks like that.
I think we talk, maybe the next segment, we talk a little bit about what do you get it, like, what do you get with home care, you know, what is the the quality of life,
Mhm.
like, edge to all of this? Because everybody thinks you're taking something away, but really you could be adding a whole lot, and
Do you
I
mean
kind of
when
have
we come back or the next time in like?
Oh, no, right, when we come
Yeah,
back from break.
okay.
We can talk about quality of life, and maybe I'll touch on it for home care, and I'll give a couple examples of people's lives getting dramatically better having
Mhm.
assistance. I have a couple stories that I always like to tell, and then I'm sure, like, assisted living, that's their whole ballgame, is
Is
all
it
the
good quality?
activities and all of
Once
the
they
different
get past,
opportunities.
you know, I
and-
don't wanna be here, it's like, so what's their quality
They
of
make a
life?
friend.
Oh my God, they make
So
friends.
that's,
and
yeah,
they're-
Just make
quality
one
of life.
friend.
No, they're ringleading and going out, they're doing things, they're doing life again.
Even my grandmother, who that was a long, long time ago, when she finally went into a home, I don't know if it was assisted living or whatever at that time. But anyway, I remember all of a sudden she didn't wanna come over, cause she wanted to play cards with her friends. You know, and when she fought it
Mhm.
so much, and yet it changed completely when she literally got there. And you go out, and I'm sure there's people there that help make that happen a little bit. Hey,
Mhm.
Rosie, this is, you know, Patty or whatever. You might
Oh, and
like to play
You wanna hear something funny?
canasta.
A lot of times, folks who are placing their loved one actually hire us for a few hours a day for like the first couple weeks,
Oh, I-
just to get them
was gonna
out
say
and
that,
like,
yeah.
so they actually, they buddy up the services for a short while to make sure they get to the activity, to make sure
Oh,
they
that's
kind of make
cool.
connections and they have just like one-on-one
That's good to
assistance.
know.
I
That's
even
another
had
good thing.
and I don't know who I did this with, I think it was Bright Star, when Jenny Rail was still running her Bright Star.
Okay.
I bought, with every placement, I bought like 6 hours of home care,
Okay,
and
we've
I
done.
paid for it. And so I had so Jenny charged me a price, and they got a caregiver for like 4 hours or 6 hours to
Mhm.
unpack
I don't know
them,
if you're there,
to transfer, meet all the people
but
on
it
the
is
first 2
like an
days,
ice
get out.
cube in here.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And I paid for it,
Mhm.
because I wanted it to be a part of our package to help them move in and
And it's a differentiator for you.
And-
Yep, we've done that
We have a
before.
minute to go.